Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. I'm calling to order this meeting of the CCTA Administration and Projects Committee. It is Thursday, June 6th at 8:32 a.m. Let's start with a video.
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
All right, Christina, would you be kind enough to conduct the roll call?
Commissioner Arnridge? Commissioner Fideli?
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez-Thorpe?
Here.
Vice Chair Nowak?
Here.
And Chair Sauce?
Here.
All
Thank you, Christina. All right, next item is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public in attendance or virtually to provide comments on items that are not on the agenda. Does anyone wish to speak? I don't see any raised hands. Christina, do you have anyone online or written comments?
No, I have no written comments.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes public comment. Next is a consent calendar. Does any commissioner want to take an item off? All right, could I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Nowak. Second by Hernandez-Thorpe. Any public comment? Seeing none. Can we just do an aye, or do we need a roll call, Christine? Okay, would you conduct a roll call? I already asked for public comment, and there wasn't any. No, this is consent, the consent.
We have a motion by Commissioner Nowak, or Vice Chair Nowak, and second by Commissioner Thorpe. So Commissioner or Vice Chair Nowak?
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli?
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez-Thorpe?
Aye.
And Chair Sauce?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, Christina. All right, next is on the regular agenda items. The first item is an informational item that will be introduced by our very own Lindy Johnson. Good morning, Lindy.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, all. I'm happy to introduce Mark Watts, who's here to provide us a state legislative update.
Morning, Mark. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning. I was expecting something special, and I didn't think that was going to be me, so that's why I looked startled.
You're always special.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I've got a couple of things to report on. And unfortunately, my voice is working today, so I'm going to move as quickly as I can. So on the state budget, last week, the two legislative leaders announced that they had reached an agreement on how to move forward with a budget. And they both houses adopted budgets. Affecting transportation, jointly maintain the $4 billion for the formula-based transit and intercity rail program. That had been money provided 2 years before. Hard fought to retain last year, and they're fighting for us to keep it again this year. So we'll see. The governor is looking at that portion of the budget to stretch it out. In other words, put the money in outer years so that the obligation isn't in the current year budget. So there's going to be a little bit of give and take between the legislative leadership and the governor on that issue. Probably the most controversial issue was the proposal well, it wasn't controversial. Let me say it this way. The governor proposed to remove funding for the ATP program. It was supplemental general fund that was added when the budget was flush. And the advocacy groups, bike and pedestrian advocacy groups, pushed for a backfill from the state highway account. The legislative leadership agreement does that. And we'll see how that moves. I'm not sure the administration is ready to use state highway money to supplement what's already a $250 million program annually for active transportation. So those are the tidbits that were in the budget this year for transportation at this point in time. I would note on July 1st, the automatic increase for diesel fuel and gas excise taxes kicks in, and we'll see the diesel tax will go from 44 cents a gallon to 45.5 cents a gallon, and the gas tax will move from 58 to 59.5 cents a gallon. It usually causes an eruption in the Republican caucus leadership, and they come out swinging at it every time that happens. So we're expecting to see that. But that's an important feature of SB1. It's allowed the programs that have been funded under SB1 to maintain progress on getting us into a safe and well-maintained system. So it's one of those policy issues where there's disagreement, but it's working very well. So I'll put it that way. Your board acted on several bills at the meeting before last. AB 2286 wasn't opposed. That's the bill that dealt with autonomous vehicles in excess of 10,000 pounds. A letter was submitted per the direction to oppose that. That bill is set for hearing later in June. And so I'll be attending that in Senate Trans and take care of opposition. One of the most interesting bills was the bill to eliminate the use of general purpose lanes under the Trade Corridor Program. And the industry, together with self-helps and other folks, were able to get that bill held in committee in appropriations. So we didn't need to do a letter because it happened within days of you taking your position. So that was a nice nice get for the industry. Mr. Glazer's bill that deals with the BART Inspector General, we had a support position. The letters went in, and that bill is set for Transportation Committee in the Assembly on June 17th, and I'll be there to represent you on that. And the fourth bill was SB 768, and that pertains to a study of the CEQA factor that eliminated or requires VMT mitigation in lieu of traffic congestion mitigation. And that bill is up in Assembly Natural Resources on Monday, and the letter did go in on that in support as well. So we're making progress on the action items that you took. I have two more things to brief you on. AB 6 is a bill that had been put aside by the author, then Chair Assemblymember Friedman, last year, and it sat dormant all the way through until about a week and a half ago when it woke up with amendments. And there's a great deal of opposition, including the Self-Help County Coalition. I've been working with them to assist them in their opposition. The bill basically enhances the oversight and puts CARB more in a direct authority over RTPA and CMA adopted sustainable community strategies. Before, they had more of a advisory role. Now they can say, if it looks unlikely to achieve the reduction goals, they can shut it down absolutely and reject it. So it's a little ham-handed. We want to get that part out of the bill, and so we're working hard on that. And the bill is up Monday, but it's going to go to 2 more committees after that if it passes. And I think this would be a bill that I would recommend you or the board taking a position on it at the appropriate time. So I guess I'll put myself on notice to advise Lindy how the bill fares on Monday. There is a good chance that even before then that the author will pull the bill. There's a lot of pressure coming from industry and allied labor, carpenters, laborers, et cetera, and they're asking her to just put the bill down for now. But we'll see how that works out. Lastly, this is in the milieu of rumors, but it's got a lot of supporting information that may come true, and that's ACA 1, which is on the ballot. There's been a lot of polling about whether that measure would succeed or not. And if you recall, what it does is it allows the voter, if it's approved, the voter threshold for local special taxes and bonds would be reduced to 55%. The affordable housing advocates, who were probably some of the main early supporters, their polling shows that it would fail as is, but it could pass if it was limited to bonding. So that's under leadership consideration to make that change. They've got until June 27th to make the change for anything that's on the ballot this time around. Here, the problem it has or presents for you, obviously, for this organization, is you don't have bondable revenue streams that aren't already fully occupied. So you wouldn't be able to go put together a program based on it passing for bonds only. There was hope that you'd be able to put together a program at some future date if you wanted to, with a 55 vote threshold. So it's a dramatic change in the course of how that bill or how that measure was intended to work out. And there's a lot of activity going on up there behind the scenes from all different quarters to see if there's another way to do it. So I'll leave it at that, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Any questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, Mark, thank you very much. Thanks for your continued advocacy. That must be why your voice is struggling. All the work you're doing for us in Sacramento, thank you so much, and keep us posted on AB6. Tim?
Yeah, I just want to highlight a couple things, just because I think it relates to the kind of the state advocacy stuff. So there's been this, Caltrans systems investment strategy process that's been going on to really determine which projects will be, I'll say, supported by the state for future SB1 funding. So it's really driving, which types of projects are going to be going and being supported by the state. And so we've been going through that process, and Stephanie and the team and Ivan have been working really hard with Caltrans on going through this evaluation. And so yesterday, we got kind of the final kind of initial response of whether or not our projects be supported. So Innovate 680, the northbound express lanes, we're doing a hard push for solutions to congested corridor. And I think it's, we've kind of taken a back seat in the Bay Area for the last like 2 or 3 cycles. And so we feel like we're pretty poised to really be the Bay Area kind of project coming up in this next cycle for the express lanes project. But then we're planning on submitting on trade corridor enhancement program for the 684 interchange. And yesterday, basically, they said that they would not support that project. You know, and so, and this is really based on the direction the state's going in terms of, you know, the climate action plan for transportation infrastructure, you know, VMT reduction, and I'm a little, I mean, I'm not surprised, but on the same token, it's an operational improvement project. You know, it's not a VMT inducing project. It's an interchange project. And so I think, and there's the biggest factor in this is the project is a safety project, you know, because of your minimizing, you know, accidents in the interchange based on how the interchange is configured today. And so I was talking with Mark earlier, and I'm also working with self-help counties and potentially CalCog, and we're gonna come up with a little strategy to kind of advocate, you know, for the project. And I actually had a meeting with the California Transportation Commission Executive Director about a few weeks ago and talked to her about the CESIS process and kind of our experience with the process, because it hasn't really been a good experience, quite frankly, with the CESIS process. And so I think obviously the state's going in this direction. They're moving really fast, and I think there needs to be a better process in which we transition, you know, to that new future, that goal. Because right now they're literally coming up with policies that, in some ways, we can't even respond to some of the information they're asking for because we didn't even evaluate it in our environmental document, you know. And so I think there's a lot of discussion, I think in the Bay Area, but I think that needs to happen statewide in terms of how they're rolling out CESIS and how it's guiding, you know, and prioritizing funding through SB1. So just as an FYI.
Thanks, Tim. All right, and Sue?
I just wanted to add that SB 1031 had been pulled for those people that weren't aware of it. That was the bill to put a transportation measure on by MTC. There were so many amendments been changed. It was not getting, there was a lot of concern at MTC about even continuing sponsorship, and I think with all of that going on, the bill ended up getting pulled, and we have a special meeting at MTC on Wednesday, and I assume it'll be a discussion about next steps on whether we try to push something forward next year and what that looks like.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, a lot of Santa Clara issues down there. Yeah. On Tim, you're saying that the decision going forward, but it's not a VMT issue? It's
So
focus?
that's what we need.
What is the reason?
Yeah, we got this meeting, or this feedback yesterday, you know, and so I can actually really just, hold on, I can bring it up right now. But the reasoning for the project that we got from Caltrans in terms of why they said no was given this is for words in the email, given the recent cost increases and the unknown funding plan, we're not recommending this project. I mean, all projects face that issue, you know, and so it's really unclear to me why our project was not accepted based on their reasoning. And so, and that's a quote from the email. And so I think, and the CAPDI, the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, is, you know, pushing goals of the state in terms of VMT reducing projects, right? You know, greenhouse gas reduction projects, et cetera, bike lanes, transit, those types of things. And so what's happening through this Caltrans systems investment strategy is it's kind of memorializing that CAPTI and coming up with a formal process to evaluate projects of whether or not the projects meet these new state goals, which in some ways was not contemplated when SB1 was passed, you know, by the voters, right? And so this is a way of kind of driving SB1 funding to a direction, you know, to meet state goals. And so I think Innovate 680 was one of the very first the first project in the state that had an approved VMT mitigation strategy. So I'm not surprised that project got supported. I mean, I was expecting it to get supported by the state, because that project is kind of being recognized throughout the state and brought up about how you can achieve the state goals with a state highway project, because there's a lot of discussion about how to do that, and we've done it. And so I'm not surprised there, but when you're starting to talk about operational improvement projects and interchange projects, like that's the question mark of why why we're not supporting projects like that, particularly ones focused around freight and safety, you know. Which are safety and freight, I mean, those are elements of CAPTI as well, you know, not just VMT. Hopefully that answered your question.
Just keep us,
Yeah.
All right, any other questions, comments? Let's move. Lindy, would you like to introduce our next speaker?
I would, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to introduce Gus Maples of Ty Ginsburg and Associates to provide us with our federal update this morning. Good morning, Gus.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I've got some updates on the appropriations fiscal year 25 process here in Washington, D.C. As y'all are aware, Contra Costa has submitted a couple of different projects for consideration among the delegation. These are politically correct termed as community project funding, and congressmen only get to select 15 total government-wide to put forward to the appropriations committees for further consideration. We have been successful advocating to Congressman DeSaulnier. He has selected the Antioch and Oakley Smart Signals project and is requesting $1.9 million in funding in FY25 for that one. Congressman Garamendi has also picked the Antioch Shared Mobility Hub, and he's requesting just over $3 million for that project as well. This is great news, and now we'll be shifting towards the committee focus. The Appropriations Committee will be vetting these further, taking in all the requests from members of Congress across the country and determining how much of the allocations they are able to put forward for projects like these. I do also want to acknowledge these two congressmen did request full funding for the U.S. DOT office that administers programs like SMART grants, which CCTA has benefited from earlier this year, and some other things that can be of benefit to the agency. They also take the lead on all of our congressional support letters for other grants. We have a few other things pending, hoping for good news later this summer and this year. They're good local champions for the agency. Senators also take requests across the whole state on an advocacy trip to DC earlier this spring. Tim made the pitch to Senator Padilla's transportation and labor advisors for workforce development funding at GoMentum. I'm happy to say that just this week, we learned that project has also been put forward for $850,000 in funding. He's requesting that through the Senate Appropriations Transportation Subcommittee. So that will also be a separate review process over on the Senate side of the chamber. The House, we're expecting to see their draft bill probably by the end of this month, if not around the 4th of July holiday. They could be a little earlier than the Senate, but they got a bit of a head start. Hopefully, the government will be funded through the September 30th deadline. I'm expecting a continuing resolution to get through that and get through the election this fall. But then we will be hopeful that our projects are funded throughout the appropriations measures Congress will be taking up in the lame duck session. We'll, of course, be keeping an eye on this and working with the member offices as they may have any other follow-up questions or further vetting of these with the committee staff. But good news this morning, and we will certainly be monitoring this throughout the summer as these bills come up for further consideration. That's the bulk of my presentation this morning, but happy to take any questions if anyone has anything else.
Questions or comments for Gus? Congratulations to Antioch. Good day for Antioch.
Every day I'm the mayor, it's a good day for Antioch. I'm just kidding.
I set that up. That's
I did that just for Sue.
There's an empty seat between.
All right, any public comment? Tim, you want to add anything? Or Lindy? Okay. Okay, Gus, thanks. Enjoy the Washington summer.
Yes.
All right, take care. Thank you very much. All right, next item is the fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget for the Authority and Congestion Management Agency. This is an action item. And here is Brian Keller, our CFO. Welcome. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I am Brian Keller, excuse me, the Chief Financial Officer. First, before I do anything, I want to thank all of the individual staff members that worked on the budget. Specifically, I spent the last 10 years doing the budget solely by myself. This year, it was done by Juliana, our finance manager, with not much input from me, just a little bit of supervision, and I'm very proud of the work that she's put in, and very excited about the future for CCTA and the hard work that she puts in there. As we look at the budget, come on. There we go. A little slow moving on this side. What we want to do is always, the number one thing you look at in a budget is want to make sure it's a balanced budget. And as you can see, there's $210 million of revenues and reserves that are being used, as well as $210 million of expenditures. The biggest item is sales tax revenue. Sales tax revenue is the allocation to all the individual cities and programs that we work on. And we also have a very robust federal, state, and local revenues where we go out and seek grants. There's a little over 30 of them right now, and a lot of these fund our capital and programs, and as well as our planning department. With the recent increases in interest rates, we're looking to receive about $4.5 million in interest. That really helps the programs put a little money aside in their reserves as we move forward. And then that second to last item in the revenues column is other sources. And what that is when we started Measure C and then when we started Measure J, every single year we put away an allocation of sales tax dollars into each one of those 29 different programs. And so they accumulate money in there during the point in time. Ped bike and TLC projects, we collect money and then we allocate and do resolutions for individual cities to build their individual projects. And it takes several years for them to get to that point, and so we're spending money on that particular point in time. Non-Measure J projects is $3.5 million. We have a Safe Streets for All is part of that $3.5 million, and again, we're receiving offset of revenues and grants to pay for that. The project section is going up to $52 million. The program section is an allocation of funds that we collect, part of the sales tax, plus some external federal, state, and local revenues. Administration section is the overhead for CCTA, whether it be the rent, whether it be the salaries for the admin, as well as other supplies and services. Debt service was part of the capital program. It's a level debt service. It'll go all the way through 2034, and right now it's looking to be about $44.4 million. And again, the non-Measure J projects are the Safe Streets for All that balance up above with the revenues that are offsetting that. Sales tax revenues, you can think back to the pandemic in 2020. We're going up $27 million just a number of years later. Sales tax in Contra Costa County is doing really, really well, which is helping us in our budget and propelling us into putting more projects on the street and more people in transportation-related projects. The capital projects has $26.5 million of funding outside sources. You can see the RM3 is going from 19 million to about 1.4 as we completed the 684 project as well as the McCollum Bridge project. It's always a timing of the capital projects. Federal, state funds, some other funds are all related to the projects, and I'll get to the next slide, and it kind of shows how it works in the 9 capital projects that we have. We also have some external funding for planning and CMA. We have federal surface transportation is about $1 million. It's about what we get every year. Contributions from local agencies for streetlight data. So we go out and we spend $550 on a subscription for big data. And then what happens is we allocate some of those charges out to the individual cities who wish to participate and get that data. And that's about $223. So it almost cuts the price for all this data in half. Contributions from local agencies is going up to $609,000 as a budget. So when we go out and we budget, anything that we do, any study that we do in the planning department, we say, okay, if it's benefiting all the cities, we charge it to that individual account, and then we have grant funding, we have other funding that comes in to help pay for it. Whatever's left at the bottom that's not paid for, we allocate it out to the individual cities, and they all pay a portion. Motor vehicle registration, the TFC money is about $1.6 million, and then we're also going to get about $500,000 from the GoMena. We have an agreement with NextGen where they'll pay us $500,000 or 10% of the revenue that they have out there. And so we have that in the budget as well. And as we're working on the Iron Horse Trail overcrossing, we have some expenditures as well as allocating about $9.9 million in funding that's going to come from STIP and the city as well to help pay for that project. So when we look at the largest part of our budget has always been the capital program. And if we look at the proposed budget, if you look at projects 1 through 9, which are on a strategic plan, it's about $39.7 million. And then we're going to receive about $26.6 million in state, federal, and local grants. And you can see how they're allocated. As you can see, the I-60 R4 interchange, we have about $1.3 million in there for that. As we look at the I-680 corridor, we have about $13 million, and that's for the Innovate 680 project for some of the federal funding and different projects we have. So at the end of the day, what we're utilizing is about $13 million of Measure J funds that were part of our savings in prior years because we get 42.5% of the sales tax money. It sits in the programs, in the capital program. And as we deliver these projects, we'll utilize about $13 million there. And so the green highlighted piece is, you know, one of the questions came up several years ago. Why do we still have charges to the Caldecott, BART, SR4 widening? We have a PMO consultant that charges oversight that delivers part of the projects and working with CCTA to help sure that we're doing some grant stuff and some other projects that are related to that PMO. And that's about $1.3 million for that aspect. And we spread it across all of them based off a percentage that's allocated in the strategic plan. So capital improvement projects for Measure J, we're now including sub-regional countywide projects, is about $48.6 million. And for each one of those, we covered 1 through 9 on the previous one. We have major street improvements, which is $6.6 million. And in my comments here, it shows about the Norris Canyon Barrier is one of the larger projects at $2 million, as well as the Diablo Road Trail, which is $3.3 million. Again, we budget for this, and we have to wait for the cities to deliver. So sometimes these budgets will sit here for a couple of years as the cities try and implement and complete these projects based off of their environmental challenges or just staffing challenges or construction challenges. And so countywide capital maintenance programs, we have a special category that we allocate some funds for some BART improvements, and that's usually managed by Stephanie. Stephanie does a wonderful job at managing that part of the budget, so thank you, Stephanie. And that's about $2.4 million. The programs department is up $11.7 million. A part of that is the allocation of sales tax revenue. As sales tax revenue goes up, so does the allocation percentages that we send out to the ferry service, the bus services, TLC, PedBike, Commute Alternatives, and Paratransit. Also, one of the biggest components besides the capital projects is our return to source funds for the sales tax money to the cities for their local street and sub-regional maintenance, and that's going to be about 24.1 million of the sales tax money that we have. San Ramon Iron Horse Trail Overcrossing project is about $9.9 million. We also have increases in the budget for the TLC program for 18.1 million and Ped Bike at 8.6 million. And again, that's kind of where the accumulation of funds in prior years is why you're seeing those other sources being up there around $30 million. It's a budgeted item, so it all depends on how much is used by the cities in delivering these projects. Paratransit program is $9 million. They have the ATSP project, the TNC project, the One Click project as well. And so several other programs, the TFC program, we have a budget of about 1.9 million. And again, what's new this year is with part of the Gomenham station, you know, the oversight by NextGen. We also have a task order for AMG that's about $200,000 annually to oversee the program and help with the task orders related to the innovation program on that. The planning department has about $7.4 million allocated for this year. That's a $1.5 million decrease over last year. They have a lot of regional planning tasks. I believe it was in the month of April. John was up here delivering what they were going to do as part of the CMA budget. So just really quickly, regional planning tasks is pretty much an annual thing at $400,000. The major project they're working on right now is the CTP update, $600,000. And we had mentioned before, big data. Last year it was streetlight data. It could be somebody different next year, $550,000. Corridor planning, $300,000. And then one of their other projects that they've been working on is Vision Zero. I'm sure I might have missed a few things that they're doing there, but I was just looking for the higher dollar amounts that I saw in the budget. VMT mitigation, Vision Zero, $350,000. And then we have salaries and benefits for state planning and programming and monitoring. We receive about $578,000 in allocations for next fiscal year. And so what staff does is we went from about $350,000 in the previous year to $578,000 for the next fiscal year. So we take all the staff members that work in that and we reallocate some of their time from like a projects division to charging the PPM for delivering some of the projects for the county and different things like that. On-call contracts awarded and budgeted in this planning department is about $2 million. Several contracts and studies, again, are partially funded by grant revenues, OBAG 3 studies, and action plans, budget of $1.8 million offset by grant funding. Administration department. So the administration department is $3.8 million. As part of that is the salaries and benefits are $1.1 million and represent 0.89 of the 1% limitation. So 1% of our sales tax money that we collect all the way from the beginning of Measure J all the way to the end of Measure J is 1%. And every year we utilize anywhere from 0.7% and we budget about 0.89%. Later this year, when I bring the financials back, we'll tell you what we ended up utilizing of the 1%. So as part of the administration part, we have a decreased budget for the property lease. That's another action item I have on the board following this one, but it's going down $388,000. Again, as part of the negotiation with the lease extension, we got them to credit us 7 months of free rent. Then we have an increase of $145,000 for software services for next year. A couple months ago, we approved a software contract with OpenGov. Several cities use up OpenGov. It's a budgeting tool that gives some performance indicators. And what it really does for someone in my position and someone for all of us here at CCTA is it's going to give us an opportunity to take this strategic plan and our estimated sales tax between now and 2034, put it into a software program, and then layer in each of the individual departments' expenses and really give us a better idea how to guide us into the future, how much funds we have available for delivering projects, and give us an opportunity to layer in all of the external grants and things that we're doing so that we can see what extra projects we can deliver for the county and what items that may cause some concerns that we may have to delay 1 year or 2 years, or can we accelerate it based off of the sales tax projections and other costs that we have in there? We have an increase in here for about $40,000 for information systems replacements. So when the pandemic happened in 2020, we ran out and we bought, let's just use a round number, 20 laptops, and we had to buy new things so people can work remotely and here in the end of life for some of those items for some individuals is coming a little faster, and it's a lot easier to, many of your cities do it as well. You give everything like a 4 or a 5 year lifespan, and you try and replace them before you get stuck and they have something that doesn't work, and they lose some downtime as well. So that's what's in there for that piece. We have a decrease of $170,000 in public engagement services from last fiscal year, but we do budget about $1 million for our public engagement services. Again, debt service, $44.4 million for the next fiscal year. Part of that is principal and interest, just like a regular home loan or any other loan. The more principal you pay, the lower the interest goes. And so you're paying about $28 million in debt service, $16 million in interest. So your total debt service is 37% of the $120 million. Again, we have a cap of 42.5% for the projects division, and so that leaves extra percentages in there. Right now, I've been working with our consultants, our fiscal advisors related to some opportunities. On my calendar is whenever we can call on some of our outstanding bonds. And when you go and you issue bonds, there's usually a 10-year no call. So we issued some bonds in 2015 that have a very high value of, I think it's like $170 million that's on there. And so a number of those are callable next year. And as with interest rates, potentially coming down, that gives us an opportunity to refinance and save some money for the organization. Right now, some of the projections that I've been seeing are anywhere from the $5 to $6 million, but we'll know a little more as we get closer to next year. Authority salaries and benefits is $6.9 million. It's up $408,000. Authorized positions in this budget tonight, or this afternoon, is 25. We have 2 additional pending items. That's another action item ahead of you today. That'll bring us to a total of 27. Again, we do our mid-year budget in January, February. We work on it, and so if we start filling positions, we'll make those modifications and add them to the budget at that point in time. The annual PERS employer rate increases, as you can see, there's 2 different types of employees here at CCTA. There's classic employees that have been in the CalPERS system before 2013, and then you have the PEPRA employees, or the newer employees that joined the CalPERS after 2013. So the cost for the agency went from 11.84% to 11.88%. I would like to say that, working at a city and tracking what a lot of other cities have as pension expenses, it's a relatively low amount. The annual OPEB employer contribution is just 2%. We are super funded on that one, meaning due to the great years of some really good making deposits ahead of time and having some great interest rate returns, has allowed us to be super funded, more money invested. The last couple of years, there were some lower interest rates, so that number came down quite a bit. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this fiscal year ends and seeing where we end up on the CalPERS as well as the OPEB employer base side, hoping they're both going to be fully funded at the end of this year. So with that concludes my presentation. We ask that you push this to the authority board, and we will seek adoption at a public meeting for that then.
Thank you. Questions, comments? I have a quick question. Brian, thank you. As usual, you have taken a $210 million budget and translated it into plain English, so I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for that snapshot. On the salary and benefits expense, I think I heard you say that the budget you just presented assumes 25 FTE, but does bring in the 2.6% CPI adjustment. So I assume that 2 items later, we're going to talk about what the impact would be of the 2 additional FTEs in terms of the 1% cap.
As the CFO and, some comments that we've had internally in the last week, I'll take the opportunity to address that now.
Okay, thank you.
As CFO, that is my hat, and I probably should answer those questions. There's allocations of employees. So whenever you hire an employee, you allocate staff time to an individual department, and these 2 director positions, as well as the addition to Lindy's team, the planning department estimation would be over planning and programs. And so that would have nothing to do on the administrative side, maybe a very small percent. Then you're looking at the person to help Tim and oversee the projects. They would have also an additional, probably administrative function in there that may rise the cap up a little bit. And then Lindy's assistant would probably be working on a lot of different grants and projects that we're having, and a lot of their staff time would be allocated to that. So there would be a small percentage on the administrative side as well. So potentially, as we're looking at other, grants and different things, there's opportunity for staff time to move. Every year we allocate staff time out and we move it from department to department. And every presentation I've done, and over the last 11 years, we talk about that 1% because we know it's something we want to stay right around that 1%. I will tell you there's over $1 million in savings from prior years, from all those years that we didn't spend the 1%. The intention of those funds is to keep them as long as possible. And just like when Measure C closed, we still had to deliver all those projects and had money to pay for planning and staff time for many years after Measure C closed, and that's my plan to do with Measure J. As long as I'm here to help present and preserve those funds, that's what we'll do.
Okay, thank you. So I think I'm hearing that the needle will not move much from 0.89%.
It will go up, yes.
It'll go up,
Yes.
but certainly not beyond not past the red line.
I will make sure it does not.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, any other comments or questions? Yeah, Paul.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple. And I did get a email late last night from our friend Commissioner Chris Kelly to make sure that she had her input in some of this. On Gomentum Station, during this transition period, can we talk about, her concern was whether or not CCTA was on track to receive the $500,000 in revenue from Gomentum, and how we're doing, if we've gotten any reports about the next generation mobility yet, or if that even impacts this budget.
My role as the Chief Financial Officer, and Tim has made me part of the executive meetings that we have with NextGen. We've had some discussions. They've given us some forecasts on some quarterly payments to CCTA for the $500,000. So we're probably expected to receive our first quarter payment of that $500,000. I believe they had it listed in September. So our goal is $500,000 every fiscal year that we work with them. And that started in April 1st, I believe. So we're going to get $500,000 or 10% of their total revenue that they receive out there.
So that is reflected in this budget?
Yes.
Okay.
I mentioned on one of the slides $500,000,
Okay.
and then I tried to highlight if it goes above, we get 10%.
Okay. Tim and I talked a little bit about this, but as far as discussion on reserve policy at CCTA, what is our reserve policy, and how do we, I mean, I don't know, that's a big issue. It's probably a separate PowerPoint presentation, but.
Yeah, I'm not going to read between the
Might
lines.
be a separate meeting.
Separate meeting, but just generally, it's something that's, where is that amount of money? How does it, I know at city level, it's a big, important thing, so.
Look at that, right there, $13.7 million of reserve funds. So basically, the reserve policy was established by a resolution a couple years ago. And what the reserve policy was to do is, I took a really good snapshot from a presentation that Hisham
ready
did.
here. Okay.
The priority projects, programs identified, eligible under Measure J program. We could do a separate presentation on this. We could talk about it in general, but since it's part of the budget and we do put some money aside, there's not a use of any of these reserve funds in this year's budget. The reserve policy was established because your cities, your agencies that you guys all work at, you might have a 20% reserve policy. You might have a 30% reserve policy. So if you had a 30% reserve policy, which some cities do, which is really aggressive and really nice, that would mean that CCTA would need to have, let's just say our budget was $200 million. We'd need to have $60 million set aside if there was a downturn in the economy to do things. We've seen in 2008 and 9, when you take that 8, 9, 10 years, it was a downturn of about 20%. When we went through the pandemic in 2020, it was expected that we were going to see a sales tax, reduce of another 20% again. So we kept looking at all of these things that we're doing, and we're like, we really need to protect all the agencies we serve as well as ourselves. Some of the allocations that we do, we have several agencies that we fund, the transit agencies. So July 1st, so in June and July and September, we do these allocations to the bus programs that we have money set aside for. We pay them 6 months up front. And we've collected we don't collect our first sales tax payment for the next fiscal year until September. So sometimes in August, we pay 6 months of money ahead of time, and we don't collect our last payment for the fiscal year until August. So we front these programs, their money and when I was hired, we paid people quarterly. We paid all of these bus agencies quarterly. And so what we tried to do is be a better partner. So we started paying them 6 months. And then in 6 months later, we gave them the next 6 months. And so, we're fronting our money ahead of time and paying these bus agencies on the expectation that we're going to deliver $120 million in sales tax. Well, what happens if something happens before then and we don't have the funds inside? The reserve policy could be, it's good because it keeps money in those individual accounts. And so when we held back $13.5 million, that allowed the reserves to earn $200,000 in interest in that 1 year. And it allows us to, and we bookmark every single penny that we receive and put in that reserve policy by each category. And so all of that money is going to be set aside to be delivered at the end of the program, at the end of Measure J. So it's just a safekeepings, creating a reserve policy for the authority, just as you would do at your own cities. Set money aside for a rainy day, for an emergency situation, or different things like that. So hope that answers your question.
And maybe I could just add to that just a little. I mean, I think the purpose of the reserve policy was to, and I think I've talked about this in the past with the board and with all of you individually, but I think that what the purpose of it is to really be able to address downturns in the economy, right?
That's what I was
Yeah,
wondering about,
so as we think about the strategic plan and, we're projecting revenues out, our total expected program at the end of Measure J is 2.6 billion, right? And so if let's say there's a downturn in the economy and now that projection goes down to 2.5 billion. Well, now we got to cut everything back by $100 million. And what we have done historically in the past is cut back on the project side. And so I remember, for example, and I think I just use this this same example, but, like in 2018, when we did the strategic plan, I remember really we had a downturn. We actually, at that time, it was 2.7 billion and it went down to 2.6 billion. So we had to cut $100 million. And so Hisham had to go to all the RTPCs and talk to the RTPCs about, hey, what do you all want to cut? We have to cut $100 million, out of our projects. And so I know, like for Innovate 680, it had 40 million in there and it got cut down to 19 million. And so because the projects were, roughly what, 95%, 96% delivered, there's not a lot of room in the projects to adjust and to absorb for that type of fluctuation in the economy. And so what we're doing now is we're doing that more on the program side. And so rather than doing these, quote unquote, true up payments, we're taking the delta between projected and actual, putting it in a reserve, and our goal would be to at least raise roughly about $40 to $50 million in the reserve to help address any downturns in the economy. And then I think once we get to that $40 or $50 million, then we can come back to the board and say, hey, we've got $40 or $50 million, so we can either continue to put more money in the reserve, or we can continue to disperse true up at that time, and so, right now we've got roughly 14 million, I think Brian, this year we're on track to roughly maybe 5 or 6 million between 117 and our future projections. So I think we're getting so I think depending on what happens in the economy and actuals and projected, we're slowly going to build up this reserve, and and that way, again, we can address things like Brian is saying, but also, if you go back to that list really quick, Brian, I think it's important to kind of go through that list. This list, back. This is the eligibility of the reserves, and I think the important thing here is the reserves are at the complete discretion of the authority board, and so
That's what I was.
yeah, so the board has the discretion to say, hey, staff, or hey, CCTA, it's time to use the reserves for X, Y, and Z.
Thank you, Tim. And that's what looking at the budget, I get the cutbacks in a downturn. I was just, when do you apply reserves and how do we apply it? And is it written down somewhere? I had no idea.
Yeah.
So it can come before the board and we can decide based on need?
Yeah, based on need. I mean, that's actually what this list here explains is, priorities identified by the authority to address unforeseen conditions. Obviously, I think the bottom line is that the expenditures obviously have to be in line with the expenditure plan. That's really the rule book here. And so, like, if you go back to the next slide, Brian, when we, for example, you look at, local streets and maintenance, LSM, 2.4 million, that 2.4 million has to be used on local streets and maintenance. So we can't use that 2.4 million on something else, and so these reserves, they stay inside these individual categories, and these monies have to be used within these categories. And so I think, so that's kind of, and so now back to the previous slide, sorry, the one thing that I think is important to note here is cost to place a new measure on the ballot. And I think that's important for CCTA in terms of our vitality, moving forward, is that we need a pot of money to be able to pay for a future measure. And I would project that number is roughly in the $4 to $5 million range, pay for a future measure. And so that $4 to $5 million would come out of these reserves. Obviously, it would have to be approved by the authority board. And then if we did something like that, all those list of programs would probably share the cost of that, off the top, if we were going to do something like that. But I just want to make sure that we clearly understand that these are the eligible uses, and then it's at the discretion of the authority board to when we use the reserves and how we use the reserves within these eligible uses.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Christina, have I asked for public comment yet? I've lost track of where I am.
You haven't, but we've received no public comment.
Okay, any public comment here in the room? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Can I have a motion to adopt the resolution that approves the 24-25 budget?
So move.
Motion by Hernandez Thorpe, second by Noack. Roll call, Christina?
Yes, Commissioner Fideli,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Noack,
Yes.
and Chair Sauce.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Wonderful, thank you, Brian, but I guess you're not going very far because you're up next. So our next item is the request to authorization to execute a lease agreement extension with DWF v. 2999 Oak LLC for the authority offices. Welcome back, Brian.
Thank you very much. So in your packet today, you had a lease agreement. So our lease started in this building in 2010. And so we've been here for 14 years. Our lease expires in July of 26. Being the forward thinking that CCTA is, we started to think about where should we be in the next 5 to 10 years. And so this particular place has served us very well. We have 11,215 square feet between the two suites. We have an existing layout across the hall that has about 15 offices around the outside of our suite. And then we have 9 cubicles, open desks that are now filled. So we started evaluating where we should be and where could we go, and this started last summer. And part of the process, we began working with the building, asking about some tenant improvements. We hired a broker to help represent CCTA. So we started the negotiation process, and with the lower cost of rents in, San Francisco and some surrounding areas, we thought that, we would be able to really get a really great deal here in Walnut Creek. But it turns out that in this area, the rents really didn't come down as drastically as we had thought that they might have. We examined very quickly a potential buying of a building, but that really didn't make sense. So we continued on the negotiation process of looking at it, extending our lease terms here. And in our existing lease, it had an option to extend at 5 years and then a second option for another 5 years. And so in working through the process, we thought that it would be ideal to set up a lease extension through December of 2032. We picked December of 2032 as we felt like it would give us 2024, and then another 4 years later, 2028 would be some, maybe 2032 might be some different things that happened in the economy or through different elections. And so December 2032 is the extension period we looked for. And what we got in response from the building is they were willing to work with us, give us an extension. They were in the staff report, I called out about $600,000 of tenant improvements. We also got 7 months free rent, which is about $270,000. And I was able to get 1.5 years of free parking for staff as part of it as well. So that was about another $30,000. So that brings us up to about $900,000 to CCTA. But you don't walk away with $900,000 and say, woohoo, we got a deal here. They were able to increase their cost a little bit every year. And then there's an inflator. We had it on the old one. So there's a 3% inflator on our lease. One of the other items that we were able to do is reset our base rate. And so when 2010, there was an old new owner of this. And so when they sold the building, the property taxes values went up. They went ahead and they did some expansion and some improvements, and all of those costs are passed on to the tenants. And so our charges have gone from $1,000 a month to $10,000 a month. So we had them reset that value as of February of 2034. And so that should give us quite a bit of savings in the future on that piece as well. So these are all little bits of savings that add up. And so our base rent is going up when you compare to where we would have been to what we're now going to be paying is about $83,000 a year. Then there's a 3% increase, which is the same as we had on there. And based on market rate, we're getting about what the market rate or a little less than what it is for some of these buildings here. Some of them are about $4.25. So we're paying $4.18 a square foot, but we're getting free rent. We're getting some leasehold improvements. And this is going to allow us to make, we're getting all new carpet, all new paint, all new lights across the hall. The office is going to be remodeled. As far as the kitchen area, some walls are coming down. We're opening them up. We're getting all new floors. The cubicles are going to be removed. We're putting in 14 new workstations that are in there. We're going to utilize the existing equipment as much as possible. And we're going to be adding 2 offices. We have a copy room that has, it's very, very long. And what we're able to do is break that down into 3 individual sections. So there'll be 2 new offices. The copiers will represent one of them. And so it'll be a really nice improvement. And it should start at the end of July if you guys move this forward. And this room will be completely up and running for our September meeting. Since we have a dark month of August, that's when they'll come in and do all of that as well. So with that, I'm welcome to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Brian? Paul?
Yeah, I think it sounds pretty good to me. Did a good job. And there's an advantage to not moving, right? It keeps this entity going forward and not the hassle of moving. But the 7 months free rent, the free parking, especially I like all the free food on commission nights. Can you keep that up? That was really important deal you made on that.
Given our appetites, it has to be.
Yeah.
Sue, did you have anything?
I was going to ask about, the reconfiguration of the offices with the additional staff being included, and then you filled it in at the end, so that was the end of my question, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. There's some really nice office space available in Moraga. Did you, you want to rethink it? It's nowhere near public transit, but it's cute.
That was the building we looked at, or potentially looked at.
Seriously?
There was one there. There was one building there.
Rats. Okay.
But you would have to convince all of your co-commissioners to go there.
I'm not going to lay odds on how successful I would be with that. Okay.
I wanted to just add one thing. December 30th of 2032 was not like just random. I just want to make sure this is really clear. So that date was strategically kind of picked because if we are not successful in passing a measure in 2028 and also in 2032, we have to start thinking about what our future is. And so I want to make that really clear in terms of the actual deadline of this new lease. And so this date was not made up. It was very strategic in terms of what will be the future of CCTA in 2032.
So moving could be an option.
All right. Any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved?
Second?
All right, we have a motion by Noack, second by Fidelli, that authorizes the chair to execute the lease extension and allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. Christina?
Commissioner Fidelli,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez Thorpe, Vice Chair Noack,
Yes?
and Chair Sauce.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, next item is Terry Ann will be presenting and seeking approval of changes to authorized positions and to amend the authority's salaries, benefits, and compensation plan for 24 through 27. Welcome.
Good morning.
Oh, and I see we have guests on the screen.
Morning.
Morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, APC Chair and Commissioners. My name is Terry Ann Grover. I'm the Director of Administrative Services. And this morning, we bring the findings and recommendations to you from the Total Compensation Study, and I'll refer to it as study throughout my presentation. Every 3 years, we seek approval from the Authority Board to conduct a study in order to maintain the authority's competitiveness in the labor marketplace and adhere to our compensation philosophy of being a market rate employer and an employer of choice, which helps us attract and retain the highest caliber employees. The study seeks to survey all active authority classifications except the executive director against comparable positions with agencies selected for the study. With this study, we used 11 comparator agencies and a benchmark of market median plus 10%, which is consistent with the past study in 2021. Due to using the 11 comparator agencies selected for this study, we were able to properly benchmark all classifications except for the assistant programs manager, in which internal alignment was utilized. In January, we reinstated the Salary and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee to provide policy input and review the findings and recommendations from the study. We kicked off the process after Authority Board approval on February 1st with Gallagher Benefit Services to conduct the study as our compensation plan expires on June 30th. On May 15th, we met with the Salary and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee to discuss the findings and recommendations from the study. On May 15th, we also presented the findings from the organizational assessment, and the Authority Board adopted the recommendations in the Implementation Action Plan, which included the evaluation of adding 10 new classifications, 2 title reclassifications for the deputy director positions, and the addition of 2 new full-time equivalent positions for a deputy executive director for planning, programs, and policy, and the community engagement specialist, which were included in the study for development of job descriptions and salary and benefits benchmarking. This would bring the total FTEs from 25 to 27. Today, we have Alyssa Thompson and Georg Kramer with Gallagher, who led our study along with us. They're here with us virtually, and they were instrumental in the study and development of the recommendations and findings. So I will now hand it over to Alyssa to discuss the study.
Thank you, Terry Ann, and good morning. My name is Alyssa Thompson, and we will be presenting the total compensation study results and recommendations. Next slide, please. In terms of a purpose and goals of the study, as Terry Ann mentioned, the authority does conduct a study like this every 3 years in order to ensure that the compensation or salary ranges and benefits are fair and competitive based on market, as well as fiscally responsible and equitable. So as we go through the presentation in terms of the recommendations, they are based on market as well as looking at internal alignment to ensure equity across the organization. Next slide. And next slide. So in terms of the compensation study itself, before we embarked on collecting market data, we first needed to determine 3 variables. The first being the agencies in which we would compare the authority's classifications against. The second being the classifications that we would collect data on. And the third, the benefits elements that would be included in total compensation. Next slide. In terms of selection of the comparator agencies, the labor market that was used in this study in 2024 is slightly different from that in 2021. In order to select the agencies to be included in the study for 2024, we looked at various factors, which are listed here, with emphasis and focus on depth and scope of services provided. So we wanted to ensure that the organizations that were included in the survey had similar classifications to the authority, as well as performed similar scope of services and projects and programs as the authority. So as you'll see when we get to the next slide in terms of those labor market, some of the changes in the agencies, there was a focus on including agencies that had operations, so to align with some of the new classifications that the authority is recommending. In addition to scope of services, we also looked at organizational type and structure, as well as population served, number of staff, and operational budgets to give us a sense of organizational size and structure. The final factor that we also take into consideration is geographic location. So one of the things we want to think about is where and who the authority is competing with for qualified employees. Based on evaluation of these factors, next slide, the following 11 agencies were selected to be included in the study. There are 4 agencies that are the same from 2021, and then 7 new agencies that we are including in the study this year. Next slide, please. In terms of the benchmark classification, we don't have a slide speaking to that, but as Terry-Ann mentioned, the study did include all of the authorities' classifications, excluding the executive director. In terms of benchmark classifications, we did compare all of the authorities' classifications to the other agencies except for the assistant programs manager. In terms of benefits, the following slide lists out the items that were included and reported in total compensation. In terms of that, we report and collect top monthly or top step base salary, excluding longevity or performance incentive pay. As a note related to top monthly salaries for those agencies that are outside of the local geographic labor market, so those agencies that are in Southern California, we did apply a cost of labor differential to adjust for reported salaries and those differences in costs. In addition to salary, we also collect information on retirement. We did 2 tiers. We measured both the classic and the PEPRA tier. We also collect and report the cost or contributions the employer provides towards health insurances, including medical, dental, and vision. We also collected data on leaves, including vacation, holidays, and paid management leave. And finally, the last item included in total compensation was auto allowance. In addition to these benefit items, we also collected data on other additional benefits, including transit parking subsidies, hybrid work from home policies, procedures, cost of living adjustments, longevity pay, vacation accrual rates, as well as maximums and buyback policies, and policies and benefits related to paternity and maternity leave. The information or data collected related to these benefits were reported out qualitatively in a narrative format and were not included in the total compensation numbers. Next slide, please. In terms of how we go about conducting this study, we first started off with a kickoff meeting with the executive director and director of administrative services to confirm the scope of work as well as timeline. The next step was then to determine and confirm the study variables that we just spoke about. Once those are confirmed, then we can go ahead and move forward with data collection. And the way we do data collection is not to send out questionnaires to the comparator agencies to respond to. Rather, we go out and collect the data ourselves and do the comparisons of the authorities' classifications to the comparator agencies' classifications ourselves. And we look at various job factors to make that determination of comparability. In addition, we also collect salary schedules, budget documents, memorandum of understanding, and any other documentation needed to complete our data collection. We finally have follow-up conversations with each of these agencies to fill in the gaps in terms of any information we might be missing, as well as to clarify any information or questions that we might have regarding the data we collected. Once we have that data collected, then the next step is to develop recommendations based on that market data, and also to do an internal alignment review. So we first start by using the market data to make our recommendations, and then do another review to look at the organization as a whole in terms of internal alignment. The final step being then to provide and deliver a final report and presentation with our recommendations. Next step. So as I mentioned, we do the comparison of classifications ourselves. And the way we do that is we evaluate the job analysis factors that are listed here. So we don't necessarily do our matching just based on job title. We actually take each of the authority's classifications and the descriptions associated with that classification and compare them to the classification descriptions at the other agencies. And so we want to evaluate and ensure that there is at least a 70% similarity between the authority's classification and the other agency's classification related to these factors that you see listed on the slide. One of the things we want to mention and acknowledge is that there are agencies included in the labor market that have different organizational structure and size compared to authority. And so when we evaluate classifications, by taking these factors into consideration, such as supervisory responsibilities or difficulty and complexity of work, which also includes consequence of error and impact of work, we are able to adjust or acknowledge that there are these size differences in the organization by doing some leveling when we do the matches. So we want to ensure that there is comparability in terms of these factors, even though the organization itself might look a little bit different. Next slide, please. So in terms of the overall market results related to the study, what we found and what we are recommending moving forward with is to make adjustments to those classifications that are more than 5% below the market median plus 10%. And you will see the classifications listed here that are being recommended for an adjustment. There are 6 classifications being recommended for an adjustment based on market and or internal alignment. And separately, there are 4 classifications that are being recommended for an adjustment just based solely on internal alignment. So specifically, we have the Chief Financial Officer, Contracts Manager, as well as the Director of Administrative Services, Deputy ED Planning Programming and Policy, and Senior Accountant being recommended for an adjustment based on market. The Deputy ED Projects and Operations is being recommended for an adjustment based on market as well as internal alignment. In the remaining classifications, the Director of External Affairs, Director of Mobility Programs, Director of Planning, and Engineering Manager are being recommended for an adjustment based on internal alignment. As a note, there are 10 classifications that were found to be at a proper salary range based on market, and so no salary adjustment is being recommended. Next slide, please. And here we have the recommendations for the new classifications that are being proposed based on the organizational assessment. These recommendations are based on market as well as internal alignment results. So these are the new classifications.
Next slide, right?
Yes. Yeah. And then finally, the last recommendation based on the market study is making recommendations to adjust the vacation accrual rates for exempt and non-exempt staff. So the recommendation is to adjust the accrual rate for exempt staff at 5 to 10 years from 200 hours to 240 hours, and for more than 10 years of service from 240 to 280. And for non-exempt staff, the recommendation is to change the accrual rate for 0 to 3 years or less than 3 years from 80 hours to 96, and for more than 10 years of service from 160 hours to 200 hours. Next slide. And thank you for your time and any questions or comments.
Thank you, Alyssa. Any questions or comments from my fellow committee members?
I do have additional information to add.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh,
Please.
no worries. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the financial component of the recommendations from the study. So proposed salary range adjustments are based on the recommendations. They do include the market rate and internal alignment adjustments, as well as the consumer price index adjustment of 2.6% effective July 1st. As Brian mentioned, the annual budget is $210.6 million, and this accounts for 24 filled positions with a total salary and benefits cost of $6.9 million. Once the 3 positions are filled, this will be modified at the mid-year budget, and the impact of the CPI adjustment is $117,624, and is included in the budget. The 2 additional FTEs, which include the community engagement specialists, has a total salary and benefits annual cost of $264,920. The Deputy Executive Director for Planning, Programs, and Policy has a total salary and benefits annual cost of $453,604. And this will be an anticipated to be filled in this upcoming fiscal year. We'll be filling all 3 positions, and we're accounting for 9 months in that fiscal year of those positions being filled at a cost of $538,893 for salary and benefits. And that does include the vacancy of the Deputy Executive Director for Projects and Operations. We will be bringing an item to the board in July with Baker Tilly to conduct these recruitments. And then currently, as Brian mentioned, we're at 0.89% of the 1% administrative cap. And when these new positions are filled, they will be allocated across to admin, projects, programs, planning, funding, grants, and other fund sources to ensure that we remain under the 1% cap. The additional classifications are being added to create career ladders, position staff for career growth, and ensure we have staff in the right positions to better support the authority and the directors and managers, and to further support our succession planning goals. This will help us to better align with our peer agency competitors and ensure retention of our current staff. Reclassifications and promotions will be handled on a case-by-case basis, and we will ensure that we have the budget and stay under the administrative cap of 1%. That does conclude my presentation, and we are seeking approval of the resolution to adopt these recommendations, including the 10 new proposed classifications, 2 title reclassifications, the 2 full-time equivalent positions, which will take us up to 27 total FTEs, as well as the market internal alignment and consumer price adjustments, and the changes to the vacation accruals. Thank you.
Thank you. Good?
Yeah, I'm good.
I don't want to interrupt you again. Thank you, Tarian. Thank you for that additional detail. Any comments, questions from my fellow commissioners? Sue?
So the bulk of those changes are changes in ranges, not actually salaries. So I just wanted to clarify that because there was a lot of numbers going around. I just wanted to make sure of that. And with the vacation accruals, do we have caps on how much can be accrued?
Yeah, it's 3 times the total amount.
3 times the total amount, okay, and that's not changing.
Yeah, and then there's like an annual cash out of 1/3. So that, the only thing that will, if your vacation accruals increase, then your total would increase, but it will stay at the 3 times.
Okay, all right. That was my question, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Any other questions? Tim, anything to add? Anybody else? Any public comment? Anything come in writing, Christina?
We've received no public comment.
Okay, good. I'll close public comment and we'll entertain a motion to approve the changes to authorized positions and amend the authority's salaries, benefits, and compensation plan. Anyone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Moved by Noack, second Hernandez Thorpe. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Fideli,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez Thorpe, Vice Chair Noack,
Yes?
and Chair Sauce.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
She's got to make a phone call. She introduced Stephanie. Next item is an action item presented by Stephanie. Innovate 680, Strategic Development Project to execute amendment number 2, and so on. Sorry.
Okay. Good morning, committee members. Item 4E has actually 3 parts for Innovate 680, and they are all action items related to amendments to existing contracts for 2 of them, and also a new contract for Shared Mobility Hubs. And I also take the opportunity to provide updates during each of these items, so thank you for the opportunity to do that. So for item 4E1, it is for program support for 2 agreement amendments for Convey and AMG. This is a project schedule, a program schedule again. Taking a moment here to kind of give you all a snapshot of what's been happening, also what we're doing in the future. Since the program inception, we've spent a lot of time in planning mode and up to about year 2022, and we're in a place where we're implementing the projects in the program. During the planning phase, for example, we completed a project ConOps, which helped us find a way or provide a roadmap for us to deliver these projects, and we have since completed that. We're excited to be in the implementation phase of all these projects, and the schedule here shows the yellow being in environmental phase, green is design, the light blue is construction, and the dark blue is operations. So for year 2024, some of the projects are starting or already in operation, and some will begin the design phase. Just a quick update on each of the projects. For the advanced technology, the coordinated adaptive ramp metering, we've completed the environmental clearance for phase 1, and we are going to start design shortly here. For the coordinated adaptive traffic signals, that's a pilot project. We've identified a couple of demo corridors to implement, and we're working on scope to hopefully go after grants in the next round of federal funding. For the mobility hubs, I will skip that one. There's an item following this one. For the ADS, so the automated driving systems, the project team is working really hard to launch a couple of shuttle projects this summer in Rossmore and Martinez. The Express Lanes project, I'll skip because there's another item next. Part-time transit lane, we've hired a consultant for the testing and training at Momentum Station, so that will be starting design. I think we've already started, so that's that one. For mobility service app, or mobility as a service app, we are planning to launch the pilot later this year. So to continue to advance these projects, we're seeking 2 amendments to 2 agreements that we currently have. The first one is amendment number 2 for Convey, which provides public engagement support. They have completed 2 waves of behavior study. They produce videos about the program, quarterly newsletters, and develop a program website. And amendment number 2 will provide support to continue supporting public engagement efforts for all the projects in the program through fiscal year 25-26. The work includes public outreach efforts, support for the Northbound Express Lanes project, creating public-facing collateral, media, and event facilitation for the shuttle launches, developing public-facing materials and collateral for the part-time transit lane training and testing at Momentum Station, and then any as-needed support for the program or for the ModMOS project. And this amendment is funded with available Measure J funding program in the strategic plan. The second consultant agreement seeking amendment is with AMG, Agreement 535, and that's to allow the continuation of engineering manager support services for the program, as well as project management support for the Coordinated Adaptive Ramp Metering project. The role of the engineering support manager is to help streamline engineering and technical issue resolution, and also for design efficiencies. For the CARM project, the task includes integrating our CARM project with the Caltrans Shop Ramp Metering project. Also assisting in managing the design consultant for the project. And also this amendment replenishes the budget that we spent in the recent 2 grant applications we worked on for the program and the CARM project. The amendment is funded by Measure J, which is about $80,000, and bulk of it is by the Tri-Valley Development Fee in amount of $538,000 for the CARM project. So to summarize, staff is seeking the authorization for the board chair to execute amendment number 2 to agreement 529 with Convey in amount of $300,000 for a total agreement value of $2,023,372, and to extend terms from end of June this year to June 30th, 2026. The second request is to amend the agreement with with AMG number 535. This is amendment number 2 in amount of $618,278 for a new total agreement value of $1,677,653, and also to extend terms to June 2026. And that's for the engineering services. And with that, I'll pause for questions before I move on to the next item.
Any questions or
No
comments
questions.
first? Okay. Ask for any public comments?
We've received no public comments.
Okay. I have a motion from Paul. Commissioner
Amendment
Fidelli.
2 for agreement number 529. Yeah.
Thank you, since we've only got 3 of us. So we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Fidelli?
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez-Thorpe? Vice Chair Noack?
Yes.
And Chair Sauce. The motion passes with members present.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. The second item under 4E is for the Northbound Express Lane completion project. Just a quick update. As you all know, we're trying to close this gap on northbound 680 between Avorna in Walnut Creek to just around Arthur Road in Martinez. We're studying 4 build alternatives. Currently on northbound 680, the express lane ends in Avorna. That's shown in the gray in the map on the bottom. And we're aiming to close the gap that is shown in light blue and pink. We're also planning to, or proposing to, convert the existing HOV lane to an express lane in the dark blue section, which is 242 to Arthur Road. And we're studying 4 build alternatives. We're studying within the 4 alternatives, we have various combination of design elements. The first one being realigning southbound 680 to physically make room for a continuous northbound express lane in the vicinity of 680 and 24 interchange. And in order to completely close the gap, this design element is required. Braided ramps is to address the weaving issues at Lawrence and Treat Boulevard area, really just separating the on-ramp and off-ramp movements, having Lawrence Way going under the new elevated Treat Boulevard off-ramp. Lane addition is to add an express lane through widening or restriping, physically adding a lane. General purpose lane conversion is to convert an existing inside lane to an express lane. And then lastly, converting the HOV to an express north of 242. Again, we're studying 4 alternatives. I won't belabor all of the alternatives, but basically it ranges from capital cost from $91 million to $282 million. And 1C and 3 closes the gap. Alternative 2 and 5 reduces the gap. And alternative 5 is the one that reduces the express lane gap, leaving that pink area as a gap, but constructing the new express lane with conversions, basically taking the inside lane to become the express lane, and those are in the light blue sections. We are actually currently circulating to the public the environmental document draft version. We did that on May 8th, and we're currently in the public circulation phase ending on June 24th. And that's done in partnership with Caltrans, and the comment period closes on June 24th. The project approval and the end of project approval environmental clearance is anticipated for June 2025. With the comments received, those will be considered in the selection of preferred alternative, hopefully to end by August. And that will line us up really nicely with the SB1 funding that Tim was talking about with the solution for congested corridor. We're expecting that call for project to come out in August. So by then, if we have a selected alternative, then we can proceed with applying for funding for construction. The slide here and in your packet too, there's the project website where you can find ways to directly provide comment, or other ways to comment is listed on the website. We've completed one in-person public meeting actually last night here in this boardroom. We have another one this evening, same time, 6 to 8 on virtual platform on Zoom. So please, if you are interested, please come on and provide comments, either have questions or comments, formal comments need to be provided through the website or those ways that are shown on the website. And we also do appreciate you sharing with your constituents and your communities about this opportunity to comment, again, which will be considered, the comments will be considered as we select an alternative for the project. There you go. So this item is really to request additional budget for the HDR team to complete the PAED phase. There's been a lot of significant additional work related to SB 743 implementation. When they started the work, the CEQA document was not an EIR, and it was elevated to an EIR once the state decided to implement SB 743, so that's a significant effort. We had to add a new alternative covering a GP conversion based on comments we received from during public scoping, as well as to comply with SB 743. And these things lead to additional outreach efforts, including video productions about VMT, the public engagement activities with all the alternatives that we're studying. And this effort or additional funding is going to be funded by a federal grant, which is the STP funding, and that the work should cover through the end of the fiscal year 24-25, so June 30th, 2025.
PAD stands for Project Approval and Environmental Document.
Thank you. Okay. So staff is seeking the chair to execute amendment number 2 to agreement number 520 with HDR in the amount of $780,000, which includes contingency amount of about $56,663 for a new total agreement value of $9.78 million to provide engineering and environmental services for the PAED phase for the project. And I'll take any questions you may have.
So I'm just going back clarification since I've seen these options.
1,000 times. She can give that presentation.
I know. Oh, brother. So when's the decision going to be made on?
Yeah, so the timeline here is we're closing public comments on June 24th. And with that, we'll collect the comments.
Yep.
And we'll begin the process of sifting through those comments and see what they say. And that's not the decision making. It's just one factor, and so we evaluate options. All the impacts. It's not just traffic operation, for example, public input, cost. That all gets factored into it. We're beginning to have conversation with the executive level at MTC and Caltrans and Tim, of course, to start that conversation hopefully in early July once we have all the comments received. So our goal, at least hopefully we would get to a preferred alternative by August. Like, we really need to know what we're applying for SB1, which alternative, we have to have a scope. So it's lining up to work out that way. So hopefully by August, we'll know which alternative we're moving forward with. I hope I answer your question.
That seems to be a very short time frame in
Yeah.
order to get.
So from the schedule from the state, the call for project is coming out in August, and the applications are not due till November, December. So
Oh,
there's
right.
some
Okay,
time
so
there,
there's some
but of course, more time for preparation of the application is better. But not to say that we have to have an alternative when the call for project comes out, but hopefully we're working towards that. So late summer, I'm hoping.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments? Do we have any public comments?
We've received no public comments.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
That was a whispered motion to
Motion
approve
to
by
approve.
Hernandez Thorpe.
In a quiet
Oh,
second.
thank you. So we have a motion by Hernandez Thorpe, second by Fidelli. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Fidelli? Aye. Commissioner Hernandez Thorpe?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Noack?
Yes.
The motion passes with the 3 members present.
So the third item under 4E, trying to move it along. It's
Yep,
for
no,
shared
no, I
mobility
appreciate
hubs.
that.
It's a new contract for Kimley Horn to provide engineering and environmental services. So for the project, we completed a feasibility study in January 2023. 3 hubs are noted as priority: Bollinger Canyon Road, Walnut Creek BART Station, Martinez Amtrak. They support the 680 Express bus service, and in fact, these are actually our VMT mitigation strategies for northbound express lanes. CCTA got awarded TIRCIP funding, Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program. That's TIRCIP funding, and the federal grant from MTC for mobility hubs. We released a RFP 24-1 in January to procure consultant to complete environmental clearance and design. We got 2 proposals and we conducted interviews in March. Kimley Horn was selected as the top team. The contract will be managed by task orders in order to manage the grant funding and reimbursements. And also each project will have its own project schedule and approach. So the table here shows the budget for each of the hubs. The TIRCIP funding is going towards Bollinger. The federal mobility hub grant is going towards Martinez. And RM3 funding will be used for both of these hubs. In the contract, or in the RFP, we actually added the Martinez Phase 2 and Walnut Creek as an optional task, just in preparation of getting funding in the future. We can continue using Kimley Horn. They also, for transparency, they did do the feasibility study, and they have a lot of knowledge of these hubs. So the optional task is added so that we can complete these work quickly. So we don't have to go back out, but anyway, it's for 3 hubs for this contract. So staff is seeking authorization for the chair to execute agreement number 700 with Kimley Horn for a not to exceed amount of $3,308,660 and approve a contingency amount of $332,340 with a maximum total agreement value of $3.641 million to provide environmental and engineering services through June 12, 2027, and asking the board to delegate authority for the executive director or designee to negotiate and execute amendment, and allowing executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. And with that, taking any questions you may have.
Questions, comments? Paul?
Yes, the Walnut Creek BART Station, is that to enhance what's already there or to build something new?
It will utilize the space that's already in the BART station area.
space, but-
Yeah, we're not going outside the BART station, so like charging, EV charging in the parking lot, installing maybe solar and amenities like bike share and car share, really utilizing the existing space. What's off-site is improving the bike ped connection to Iron Horse Trail. Through the feasibility study, we find it's challenging for a biker or walker, perhaps on Iron Horse Trail, to connect to the BART station at Walnut Creek there's a gap in bike paths in that area, so the hub also addresses that.
And new EV stations?
Yes, that was in the that was
Do you know how
comprehensive.
many?
Not off of my
But
offhand.
significant upgrade of EV?
Yes, so the whole point of the mobility hubs is to attract people to get out of their cars,
Right.
or use alternative modes or clean modes. So having those extra EV chargers or charging for bikes hopefully will encourage those to go to the transit station and not drive all the way to the destination. So yeah, it includes some EV
Thank you.
chargers.
Thank you.
Charging for bikes too?
Yeah, that's what we're hoping to do at Martinez as well.
Okay. Did you have questions? Did you just have a green light on to make a motion?
Commissioner Nowak, I
Ask
just,
for public comment.
yeah, I just wanted to add really quick. I think what I'm hoping that you all kind of gathered, out of this quick presentation, I know we're trying to move things along here, is Innovate 680, we've been doing a lot of planning, right? I mean, we started this program back in like 2018. And I know there's been some comments about, hey, Tim, why are things taking so long? And, we're 5 years into this, what's going on, And so this program has been obviously very strategically approached in terms of really bringing together all the stakeholders, because a lot of the things that we're proposing in the corridor are pretty somewhat difficult and challenging in terms of how we're integrating the transportation system. And so for the last 5 years, we've been doing a lot of policy work, planning work, and Commissioner Nowak is on the Policy Advisory Committee, and talking about how we're going to really, what's the vision, how we're going to implement things in this corridor. And so I think really what we wanted to kind of push here is, and hopefully with these contract amendments, is that we're kind of pivoting in the program, moving away from planning and more into implementation. We finally have honed in on the very specific projects, we've prioritized, and now we're really, really focused on the Express Lanes project, obviously, the share mobility hubs, the express bus service, through the TIRSIP grant, and then also we are focused on the co-op adaptive ramp metering, as well as the signals, which was one of the slide with a bunch of bar charts on it in the very beginning. And so I think it's really important to kind of see, that things, we have that slide right there, yeah. So this slide here, I think what's also important to understand is these automated driving system projects are all part of Innovate 680, So like the shuttle in Bishop Ranch, that's part of Innovate 680, so that's a deployment. The Rossmore deployment, the county hospital deployment, the MOD application being deployed this year is all part of Innovate 680. So we're now finally getting to the point where we're actually implementing, deploying, and seeing, actual projects hit the ground in the Innovate 680 program. And so as you can kind of see from the slide, we're going to start seeing construction started happening on these projects starting in 2025. And there's going to be a lot of work happening in the corridor from 2025 to basically, 2029 to 2030. So just really wanted to highlight that we're kind of pivoting from planning to really implementation in the corridor.
Okay. Need to ask for any public comments?
We've received no public comments.
Okay, thank you.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion from Hernandez Thorpe, second from Fideli. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Fideli?
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez Thorpe?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Noack?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great. We're switching people now. Hisham, you're up. Next item is action item presented by Hisham Nueme to execute agreement number 699 with the Advanced Mobility Group for program and project management services.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hisham Nueme. I'm the Director of Programming at CCTA. As you know, historically, the Program and Project Management Contract Consultant acted as an extension of CCTA staff. They help us address peak in our workloads. They also provide us with resources in areas that require specialized expertise. In June 2019, we entered into a contract number 526 with AMG to provide PPM services. That contract will be expiring by the end of this month. Just as a side note, in the past couple of years, AMG basically helped CCTA achieve many of its objectives. They helped us prepare over 14 grant applications, which several of them were successful, securing us at least $70 million in funding, such as the $30 million, $29 million we got for the SS4A projects, the TSIP money we got from SB1 for I-80 San Pablo Dam Road, and so on. They also provided us support with ongoing Measure J projects like the I-680 State Route 4 interchange, as well as the Iron Horse Trail overcrossing at Bollinger Canyon in San Ramon. And they helped us kick off several new non-Measure J projects, like the countywide Smart Signal project, the 3 signal earmarks in Danville, Concord, and La Morinda, as well as the 5 state safe streets for all projects that we got funding for. They also helped us with the public-private partnership with Glideway, as well as helped us with the transition from AAA to NextGen. That was all in the past probably 2 years. About 1/3 of our existing contract with AMG is actually dedicated to the TDM, managing the TDM program. Can you hear me?
TDM.
Okay, sorry about that. So thanks for letting me know. About 1/3 of the existing contract with AMG, contract 526, is dedicated to the managing the TDM program and the Street Smarts program. So following your approval, the board approval in December, we basically initiated a procurement process to hire new consultants for the new contract. We issued RFP 23-7. And I want to note that in that RFP, we intentionally excluded the scope of work for the TDM and the Street Smarts program. We do intend to issue separate procurements for those 2 programs in late 2025 when the TDM strategic plan is completed. We received 2 proposals in response to the RFP. One was from AMG and the other one was from 3D Build. And a panel of 6 CCTA directors basically evaluated the 2 proposals. We actually ended up holding interviews with both of them. And the proposals were evaluated based on the criteria that was included in the RFP and also shown in the staff report. The panel ranked the AMG team at the top. The AMG provided better understanding of the authority needs. They elaborated better on their approach on how to do the work and provided a deeper bench by adding 15 sub-consultants to their team to provide specialty service that we may need in the next 5 years. For the first time, this PPM contract will be federalized to take advantage of future federal money that we may receive. So the contract had a specific DBE goal, or disadvantaged business enterprise goal, of 23%, and the AMG was able to meet that. Because of the involved process in extending federal contracts, CCTA staff is proposing a 5-year term for the contract instead of the typical 3 years, extendable by 2. However, I want to let you know that we do have language in the contract that basically subjects the consultant to annual performance evaluation. We want to ensure that their performance continues to be satisfactory during the 5 years. Unsatisfactory performance will be grounds for termination. Today, we're recommending approval of contract 699 with AMG in the amount not to exceed $24,652,165 to provide PPM services for the next 5 years. I want to note that about $9 million of that amount is actually, or 37%, will be utilized by sub-consultants on their team. And similar to the existing contract, this is just a budget. Task orders will actually have to be issued for specific work items and will be negotiated individually before any work can start. Just few notable significant tasks in the new contract. That includes the delivery of the 3 earmarked projects that I mentioned earlier, managing the countywide smart signal project through completion, as well as the 5 Safe Streets for All projects. We also are working with them on the Digital Motion Master Plan, which is essential for CCTA 4.0. And also they will help us establish the Measure X One Call, One Click Center. Needless to say, they're also providing support for the expansion of Gomentum Station and CCTA 4.0. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any question.
Questions? So, yes, sorry.
So thank you for this, and thank you to AMG. We know how critical they are as an extension of staff, really important to this entity. I was really pleased to see about the performance reviews, because $25 million is a lot of money, and there's a lot of local programs that AMG is going to be helping, including El Cerrito and West County. So my one question was, do these performance reviews ever get to the board for us to look at, or a presentation, so we know locally how they're performing?
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I think, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so the performance reviews, I think at the staff level, I think going to the board, I think is probably not.
Too much?
I think it's a little too much, yeah. I think putting a consultant, you know, in the public view of what we're doing here at CCTA, I think happy to do one-on-ones offline, you know, and we can inform the board that way, but I think, you know, elevating it to this venue, I think might be a little bit too much. So I'm happy we can maybe provide it through other ways to the board in terms of how AMG is performing, but
It's
we
just a
can.
matter of being creative.
But I
and
think bringing it to the full board, like in a public meeting, I think is a little,
I just
little
think
too
having
much.
some review
Yeah.
and some way to hear about how
Yeah.
they're doing, that's a big chunk of money.
Well, I had the same discussion with Tim yesterday.
Okay.
I just like to have sort of an annual
Yes.
go around on what they've been working on.
Right.
Because, you know, it gets very confusing
Right.
with all these different little projects here and there. And it would be nice to just have once a year presentation on all the activities that they've been involved in, so people can understand where $24 million is
Yes,
going.
yes.
And I think that's really important. So if you can do that, it doesn't have to be the
summary,
evaluation, but it can be a summary of all their activities in a year would be helpful to understand.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just say, rather than doing it in this form, I think we could do it like offline.
I think,
You
but
know,
I'm
closed
hearing,
door session.
I'm hearing two different things. Yeah, you know, what they work on is our business, that is our business. How they do it and how they perform, from my perspective, is staff's business. Because then we're managing.
Right.
We're not overseeing, we're not governing, we're managing. And so I would like to keep those two things completely separate. I think we focus on what their activities have been in terms of what their deliverables are to the authority board. But to get into the day-to-day, did they do it that way? Was it in, you know, I just think that's, at that point, we're managing, and that's Hisham's job, that's Tim's job.
Yeah, I just meant really a rundown on activities for the year. It's a large amount of money, and, you know, so many of the other projects that CCTA does, we see little bits here and there and get to discuss.
And I'm not
And
talking
this-
about managing, I'm talking
No,
about
we just
hearing
wanna
from the staff how they
hear.
did.
We can.
That's all I'm talking
If
about.
that would be,
Yeah, let us take that back and we'll come up with a plan.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any additional comments, questions? No? Any public comments?
We've received no public comments.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Actually, may I interrupt? It looks like Commissioner Arnrich has his hand raised.
Oh, for public comment? Okay. Newell?
Good morning. Good morning. I am sorry that I'm not there. I'm not officially, so I'm commenting on behalf of the public. I'm in Washington, D.C., looking for money. I just want to echo that I think AMD has done an outstanding job getting nearly 37% of their work on a consulting basis with other local consultants by the federalization is really good. I think this will demonstrate to other consultants how we might begin to do the same. And lastly, I think on what everybody was commenting, many of the other agencies, we use these tools, you never want to bring them in the public, like bringing your staff reviews into the public. It would only come to, I think, the board should there be a problem. But it's a tool that holds everybody accountable. And I would think that the board would only see something, again, if something went awry. And again, as Paul said, because of the amount of the contract, I think that's the accountability that we need. And it's a new good standard to have. That's it.
Okay. I will close the public comment then. And we did have a motion and a second, did we?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. I think a motion Hernandez Thorpe, second from Fidelli. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Fidelli,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Noack.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Okay, next item, wow.
And I'll keep that one short, the next item. So this is to approve the amendment to the existing contract with AMG to allow time to complete the TDM strategic plan. We anticipate that plan to be done by December of 2015 or end of calendar year 2015. So at that point, we will be going out with an RFP to solicit new consultants to do that work. But to allow for sufficient time, we're asking for an extension of 18 months to the existing contract for just that specific scope of work. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I'm sorry, I did not have that in my script here. Is that action item, or is this? It's the next one that's Ying's? No. I only had one here in my.
F2.
Oh, sorry. For some reason, in my script package, I didn't get it, so. Okay, that's right. I just didn't turn on my computer as a result of that, so. Okay, any questions, comments on F2? Any public comment?
We've received, well, I'm sorry,
No.
Commissioner Arnrich has his hand raised.
Okay? No?
That's an error,
Did
my
you find-
fault.
Okay.
Did you
He didn't
find
put his
money?
hand
We
down.
thought you found money back
I was about to
He
say.
found 2 nickels and ran.
Okay. Back to a motion then.
I'll make that motion. You
Oh,
second this one.
we're gonna switch it up
Yeah,
here,
we'll switch
okay.
this up a little bit. All right, so move.
I don't know if I want to make this
Oh,
second.
my
All right,
God.
second.
We have a motion by Fidelli, second by Hernandez Thorpe. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Fidelli.
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez Thorpe,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Noack.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Now, Ying, where are you going?
She's not on that.
That's what I have.
The agenda has, of course.
See, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why,
so
that's
Hisham's
why,
doing it, yeah. So
that's what,
Hisham
my,
did that
my,
item.
that's what I was thinking, okay. That's what I was asking about. All right, good. All right, so, shoosh. Okay, that concludes our regular agenda items. Next item is correspondence and communications, and we have no correspondence and communications. Now moving to the commissioner and staff comments. No commissioner comments. Executive director?
No comments. I think
No.
we're good.
Okay, great. That concludes our meeting. We're adjourned at 10:40 a.m. Thank you, everybody. It was lengthy.
What?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm getting concerned. I said, oh, wait.
So just